I think a lot of people learn the business. It's about numbers, and then you figure out how best to do people. And I strongly am one that it's about people, and then the numbers will come. And the worst of business is where it's like anonymous spreadsheets. You don't see the people. It's just about the numbers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Conscious Capitalists with myself and my partner in making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hey there, Raj.
Hey there, Timothy. Good to see you again. I'm just back home after like 5 weeks on the road in California. So just settling in.
We were playing the Where in the World is Raj game today, so we're glad to know you're back home.
Well, I'm on Pacific Coast time, so it's a little early for me, but I'm good.
Good. Well, today we have a special member of the Conscious Capitalist community, Rob Connelly, who's on our Conscious Capitalism board, and also the executive chairman and chairman of the board of an employee-owned company called Henny Penny. In Rob's role, he leads the company and the board with a deep commitment to advancing the purpose and vision of Henny Penny, which is to be a thriving company that positively impacts people. He took on the role of executive chairman in April of 2024 and has served as the chairman of the board of directors since 2020. He himself was named CEO in 2014, and he was the president of the organization from 2007 after beginning his career as vice president of marketing. Before joining Henny Penny, Rob held several key leadership roles at Verifone, a multinational technology corporation. Rob is a servant leader who steadfastly is committed to positively impacting people and facilitating growth through well-being and ownership. He really does walk the talk as a leader. And we're going to talk about Henny Penny, a 100% employee-owned food service equipment manufacturer, and go into a little bit more detail about that. Rob, welcome.
Thanks, Timothy. Good to see you. Good to see you, Raj. I look forward to the conversation.
Brilliant. Well, the first question that I'm going to ask is sort of a low ball to jump in on. It's, hey, describe the name of Henny Penny and tell us a little bit about what Henny Penny does.
Yes. Well, it's, I'll start with, it's a great name. And it was, where it
gets people's attention.
Well, it does. And I'll tell you this, when people hear the name, they're not quite sure. If they don't know Henny Penny, they're just not quite sure. They know it sounds familiar, but they're not really know why. And they're like, I think I ate there once, or they're just not sure. But what it was we were founded 68 years ago. And it was a gentleman named Chester Wagner. And it was 1957. And he and his wife had a restaurant in this small rural town where we're based, Eaton, Ohio. It's about 25 miles west of Dayton. And they were known for their fried chicken. And he was a tinkerer. And he invented the commercial pressure fryer, which was a way to cook the chicken faster and better. And then he began with selling it to anybody who might want to do fried chicken. And so it was restaurants and grocery stores and whatever. And he had a young son. And he was reading the nursery rhyme of Chicken Little, Sky is Falling. And a character in that is Henny Penny. And I'm glad he picked Henny Penny and not Turkey Lurkey, but that's how he named it. And it was, and again, when people hear the name, it's just kind of whimsical. And I tell this a lot, but often when I go check into a hotel or I'm on the phone and somebody says, what's your email address? And I go, rconnelly@hennypenny.com. They're like, what's Henny Penny? And I'm like, it's a company. And they're like, it sounds like a really nice company. I'm like, it is. So that's it. And we make commercial kitchen equipment. We're in the busiest kitchens in the world. And what I would describe our niche in the commercial kitchen would be the highest volume. So I describe it like if we were in the automobile business, we make the world's best bus. So if you want to move 70 people, we're the best way to do that. And we make it, but many people just need a car and they look at our equipment, it's like, oh, it's so expensive. And it's like, well, you just need a car. And even if you could afford us, it doesn't make sense. But so we're in the kitchens of Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, KFC, whatever, where they want to cook, cook, cook. We are mission critical. They need to be consistent and do it efficiently. And that's what we do around the world.
Well, one of the things, there's many things I love about Henny Penny, and the name is just one of them. But the other thing that I'm struck by is how innovative you've been. You guys have won innovation awards from almost every major fast food company.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's striking, right? You're in kitchen equipment, and yet here you are constantly on the innovative edge. Say a little bit about what's that history that's built that innovation mindset into the organization.
The core of it is this. We have long, enduring relationships. And so with our customers, we've been with them for 40, 50 years. With all the major brands. And what we end up working on is, a lot of times a relationship, once you get an order, you can't find the people anymore. For us, people buy our equipment because of the equipment, but they stay with us because of the support. And that's just the very beginning. So we're in their kitchens. We are with them. And to me, if you have innovation that is based on understanding their situation, and I mention this all the time as far as how we think about things, but again, we've had customers over 50 years, but what I think that gets us is only this. It gives us an opportunity, an unfair opportunity to understand their issues and opportunities. But if we don't do something with it and somebody else does, somebody would say, oh, I can't believe they would leave us. And it'd be like, well, if I turn it around to this, if we had a steel supplier come in and say, somebody would show us how to use half the steel and be better, we would go and do that. And our steel supplier, who we might have used for years, might say, what are you doing to me? And it's like, I'm not doing anything to you. I wish you would have done that. So I think the innovation is one of just really understanding the opportunities and issues and then trying to help solve them.
But you're also global as well, right? I mean, it's not just like your US-based business. I mean, you've got a manufacturing facility over in China, and you couldn't possibly have 50-year relationships in China, but it's fascinating that you've been able to take that mindset to different cultures. And I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, about half our business is outside the US. And so, but, there's a chunk of it that we have followed around the world, these brands of KFC, McDonald's, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, but I do think the core of that is really, if you're beginning with, are you understanding the problems and issues, and then are you trying to solve them, versus where I think some people get into trouble is they bring technology in, but they don't really understand what they're trying to solve. They're just trying to apply technology, where I think if you're really understanding what are the issues and opportunities, and then you take appropriate technology to solve it, is an approach that we've just tried to work on. But I will say this, it's very hard. And anybody who says they have solved innovation is, they're probably on the road to the end, because I'd say it's very difficult to keep pushing yourself to be innovative.
Yeah.
Rob, I just want to back up a little bit. So you've described yourself as an unconscious capitalist earlier in your career.
Yeah.
If I got that quote correctly. And so what catalyzed your awakening to these principles of conscious capitalism? And was there a moment or a mentor? and you've shifted your mindset to the degree that you're now, of course, on the board of
Yes.
Conscious Capitalism Inc. So what was that transition point for you?
I've been intentional about how we're trying to do business and the way we're trying to do business and impacting people. But I think what I was just totally unaware of is that there were others that were on this journey, and I just hadn't thought about it. And I ran into somebody, and I forget who, had mentioned conscious capitalism to me. This was like maybe 2014. And I then kind of Googled it and saw the book, Conscious Capitalism with John and Mackie, and I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And I loved the two parts to me. One is the defense of capitalism, which I thought was under attack. I thought it was under attack in 2014. It's at a whole new level now with the misunderstandings of, to me, I believe, what capitalism does for the world. But then also just this community that was around trying to be better. How can we be better companies and elevate humanity? And it put words and structure around something that I was like, oh, this is great. And so went down to a CEO summit and have been hooked ever since, as far as just sharing and thinking and having a construct of which I put these things that I was practicing, but I didn't know that there were others that had defined it.
Yeah. I find that fascinating because in my role, I get to go out and meet and have dinners with lots of CEOs. And what you said, Rob, is so true. It's like, I've always sort of felt this way. I've always sort of acted in a certain way. But then conscious capitalism gave me a framework and a name for something that I believed that then allowed me to connect to others and form a community. And that turns out to be a really powerful combination. And I'm just struck by that story because I hear it over and over and over again. But what underlies that to me is, you had that feeling that this was a way of doing business. And where did that come from? Because, the telecom industry where you originally came from doesn't always hit me as being that kind of business. And yet you've been over now 20 years at Henny Penny and really absorbed a different way of doing business. Where did it come from for you that there was, a better way or a different way of being a business person?
I think it was a ongoing evolution and a big turning point was me coming to Henny Penny 20 years ago. And Steve Cobb owned Henny Penny and asked me to join. And he's a remarkable man. And I mentioned this in that when we were really good friends when I joined 20 years ago. And the best part is we're even better friends today. But I learned a lot from him on his how he thought about people and organizations and not optimizing in a way that, I was looking at how do we perform and help him with the company being run. But he opened my eyes and we spent a lot of time. And I would just say this about myself. I would, I think I've probably made every mistake possible over time, and I think about like people I managed when I first started managing or whatever. But what I've always been pretty good about is just trying to learn and understand and be curious and get better. And so I think it was just a continuing evolution of really coming down to a strong desire to say, how do we help all of our people? It came from really this. I think a lot of people learn the business it's about numbers, and then you figure out how best to do people. And I strongly am one that it's about people, and then the numbers will come. But but most don't have it. It's really there. And the worst of
Yeah.
business is where it's like anonymous spreadsheets and they don't even see the number. I mean, they don't see the people. It's just about the numbers, and they run
Yeah.
the business through the numbers. And so, once you kind of, I guess, cross over and really believe it's about the people,
Yeah.
and you have a long view,
Yeah. I
those two together, and then
Yeah.
it just kind of builds. And I'd learn and have evolved to that.
Well, you go back to this idea of a belief, and yet, people are always asking us, give us the business case for conscious capitalism. And one of the things I love is the story of Henny Penny through COVID. And then what happened at the upside of COVID when you doubled the size of the business.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's such a people-centric story. And it's like, well, you want to know what the business case is? Let me tell you. So tell us that story of COVID and Henny Penny and what happened and what was the aftermath?
We came into it with these, I mean, we've always tried to take a long view. We've always come from a place of valuing relationships, and those relationships being our people, our community, our suppliers, our customers. We had not had it. We're 68 years old, so 63 years into it when COVID hit, we had not had a layoff. So we had and I would say this about not having a layoff. It doesn't mean they're very good companies that had to have a layoff, that they were they would go out of business. So we're not going to go out of business on principle. But what I would say is we always had, that would be the last thing we ever did. And we'd been fortunate in how we were able to do this. So, COVID hit. It impacted everybody, obviously. It was unprecedented. So in April of 2020, our business was off 80%. We had days where we not only didn't get orders, we had orders canceled. We were negative. And again, I'm not like we weren't unusual in that. But what I strongly believed is that our customers were not going to go out of business. They would thrive again, that this was a crisis, but we would recover. What I didn't know is when and how long. But we decided, and there was a lot of pressure to say, let's protect
Shut down.
cash.
Yeah.
Let's do this. And we were a strong company. We were like, we decided we are not going to lay off anybody. We did not affect anybody's compensation. We just started building what we called bridges because we didn't know how long it would be. And we used everything that we could. We used PPP, whatever, but we kept everybody. We had days when we had maybe 2 days of production needs, and we produced on 2 days and sent people home for 3, but paid them for the week. And we did that. It started getting better. And again, if we had been in that way for over a year, there would have been a point where we couldn't have kept going, but we kept committed to that. And so by the end of the year, it had gotten better. We ended up about 20% off for the year. And, but when it came around, we had not laid off anybody. We had not affected anybody's pay and compensation. And when we looked, we have an annual company performance profit sharing bonus. And we ended up giving a bonus because we could. We invested back, we had profits, and we were employee owned. So I feel, and because we did all of this, we were ready when the world started, our customers started really up in January of 21 and all of 21. Our customers had a year's lag for back. We were shipping normally, and we were ready because we'd kept our supply chains, we'd kept our people. We were able, and over that period of time, we about doubled in 21 and 22.
Well, one of the statistics I've heard you say, and I just want to make sure I got this right, was that I think your average order time was something like 6 weeks, and your competitors were measuring it in months, if not a year.
They were mostly like 52 weeks, which is like mainly like a kink, and people wanted to open stores and you couldn't do it. So yes, it was great. And I think we were just trying to do what we had done and felt like, and it worked out well, but it really started with the belief overall that we wanted to protect our people as long as we could.
Well, that's a wonderful story, Rob, and illustration of these principles. Reminds me of Barry Wehmiller when Bob Chapman went through the 2008 financial crisis and had essentially the same response. And they ended up doing some furloughs, I think, where people took some time off, and everybody took a month or 2 months off, without pay,
Right.
and that enabled everybody to get through it together. But that's a great illustration. And you mentioned employee ownership, so that's one of the other distinctive things, not unique, but distinctive, certainly. There are a number of companies that are starting to do more of this. But tell us about that ESOP journey for Henny Penny, when it started, why it started.
Yeah.
And then you describe it as a very pure form of conscious capitalism. So just tell us a little bit about that story.
And I don't mean that in a self-righteous way. It's like, because I will start with this as you two are. I'm a big capitalist. So I believe in every form. I believe in the value of public companies, private equity, family businesses, founder businesses, But the ESOP is a particularly fascinating, and if it works for you, it's a unique opportunity that I think really does align you deeply with a very pure form of conscious capitalism. So let me try to quickly run through this. This was because of Steve Cobb. And Steve, again, is an amazing man. And he was looking, he owned Henny Penny, felt very fortunate for what Henny Penny had been to him, his family, and the community he had grown up in, Eaton, Ohio, and the generations of families that Henny Penny had impacted. And what he was trying to figure out, he was not trying for a liquidity event. He wasn't like, I need to get out. I want to sell the company. He was mainly focused on this, and that was, how do I increase the likelihood that Henny Penny will still be here as Henny Penny 50 years from now? And within that, it was trying to think through the different ways. And through this, came across the employee-owned model and the ESOP. And I would say it's not a really common model. It's maybe 1% of the companies. And I would say a lot of companies, it might not fit for, depending on, and we talk to a lot of people, but a lot of times people won't do it also because it's, most investment bankers will discourage you from doing it because it's not what they do all the time. It's not their typical way of doing deals. It's also one, if your goal is to optimize the sale of your company, you're not going to do an ESOP. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad deal, but if you want to get the last penny, you're going to put it up for auction with private equity or a strategic sale. Anyway, we found this, and Steve had a bigger vision about what this could mean for the ESOP. And so we became an ESOP and announced it to the employees on January 8, 2015. And it was an amazing gift. And I would just say a couple of examples. Since 2015, all of our employees that are in the ESOP get every year the company is valued, you get shares. These are different shares than kind of like ownership shares, but they are really about the equity value of the company. Most people do not participate in the equity value of a company. That's usually for owners or investors. This is every employee. And if you just joined and you're in assembly to an engineer, whatever, you get these shares every year. Right now, there's over $100 million in the hands of employees.
Wow.
And that has, if you're a $60,000 a year employee, you probably have about 160,000 in your account. That is a retirement account that you put nothing in, and it's there. And by the way, at the same time, we still have our company performance bonus you get. We've got our 401k matching, great benefits or whatever. So it's a unique opportunity to really impact all of our people in a way
Yeah.
that's unusual.
And when you did that, Rob, I mean, the experience that I've had, it's one thing to have employee ownership. It's another thing to create a culture of ownership and that aspect of really educating people around what being an owner means and what their impact can be on the business model. I mean, how much effort did you put into that to sort of match, in a sense, the
Yeah.
fact that, now you have shares, but being an owner comes with it comes a certain responsibility, and you got to sort of know a little bit more about our business.
Well, it takes a while, but we had a strong culture before.
Mm,
We
yeah.
had, longtime employees, um, and that cared about each other and cared about our customers. So we had that, but the shift becomes this at some level, that it's different when you see the opportunity that you are participating in, and then the
Mm,
opportunity to say, what's my responsibility to my coworkers, my
mm,
co-employees, to how do I show up? That's a little bit different mentality. Or if somebody is not really showing up, that, oh, I'll leave it to the boss. That's not really mine. Where when
mm.
you become a part of something, it's kind of like, well, this is impacting me. And that's not okay for you to not show up. And here's what I need to show up. That shared accountability is something that doesn't happen overnight. And I
Yeah.
think what happens with most ESOPs, it's probably about 5 years or so, we've heard from other ESOPs we talked to, where there's enough in the account that finally they're like, what is this now? Or their spouse is saying like, what is this? How are you? And then it's more like, well, how can
Yeah.
I impact this? And then there is the real sense of, I can impact it. This is
Mm,
our money. This is our way of doing things. How do we each show up for each other? So that's it's an ongoing journey. It's not perfect. It's not everybody, but
yeah.
it's a journey, and we're on that. And the nice thing is, there's real
Mm,
return that is a part of that.
Which I was going to ask you. So I assume the employee engagement, the employee turnover, which were probably already pretty good to begin with. But since you went to this structure, I'm sure those numbers have probably improved, right? Reduced turnover, increased engagement.
Yeah, it's an interesting anything we do has been interesting, where you kind of look at pre-pandemic, pandemic to now. And so,
Mm.
it's we still are by far like an employer of choice, where you want to go, but it's an ongoing process to have people. As far as our turnover is much better, but we still have turnover. It's just a natural part of it. Our engagement is good. I think it ought to be over the top. We're still working on how do we how do we uh how do we continue to make it the best place to
mm.
work and grow for all of our employees, wherever they are. And I just say we're continuing to march on that journey. And there are a lot of people that it's the best place to work and grow. And then there's some that it just didn't work, and we're just trying to keep learning and growing,
Yeah.
and making it, trying to create that best environment.
So there's a few strings you pulled on that you mentioned that I want to pull on. And
Yeah.
one of them is employer of choice.
Yeah.
One of the questions I always ask is, why would the best people want to work here?
Yeah.
Second is, we're trying to be a best place to work.
Mhm.
And then the third one is, my goodness, we're a leader in innovation. It's like too often people have this discussion of, best place to work. It feels kind of soft, and that's a nice thing,
Yeah.
without really understanding that when you have the best team in the best work environment and you set a standard of performance,
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah.
You get results.
Yeah.
And that seems to shock people, like what? Oh yeah, you win all these innovation awards. Well, we started the discussion with innovation, but part of the innovation comes because you have the best people in the best work environment and you're giving them, a challenge to go after. And wow, what a surprise. You become an industry leader.
It's, I would say, we're marching hard on this journey. I
Yeah.
would also paint it that we see so far that we have to go. We've got a
Yeah.
complex mix of
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
We've got, about 1,000 people here in Eaton, of which, roughly you'd say probably 500 and some are hourly production employees. And then you have the rest of everything you need to run a company. We've got engineers, IT, finance, marketing. And within that, you've got long tenured employees and new. And so there's a mindset of performance, but then you've got long time that it's hard. We've got a lot of change going on. I liken it to this, that we're like, we're driving a car that we made ourselves. And, we're driving this car and it was made to go 50 miles an hour. And there's like duct tape flying off it. And it's just, and the people driving the car were probably involved with making this car. And at the same time, we've determined we've got to turn this into a Tesla to be able to have our large global customers not outgrow us. And so we've got people working on the car to turn it into a Tesla and a modern car. And the people driving the car think those people are just in the way of them keeping the car running. And the Tesla people are looking back and say, I don't even see how you drive this car. It doesn't have any digital, or it doesn't have any, we don't know where we're going. So there's a lot of angst with the changes that were going on. And so I would just say we're focused strongly on how do we create this best place to work and grow, and make sure we're taking care of our customers. And that is that is really, and all I would like to say is it's not easy, and it's not just perfect. And we've got a lot of dynamics that are at play. But to me, what you focus on is continuing to say, are we true to these things that we're trying to do? If people feel valued and appreciated, they feel like they're making a difference. If they feel like they like the people they work with, and they feel like they're able to grow. Now, those are all hard things, but if you have that, then you can create a lot. If you don't have it, you almost can't do anything. So that kind of gets down to the fundamental of what we're trying to do in this best place to work. Paired with, we've got to be a thriving company, means we've got to wake up every day and take care of our customers. I think it's very simple, the things that we're trying to do. The practice of it is much harder. And it's just because you got people and things.
Oh, yeah. And what I love about that, Rob, is like, what we say nowadays is that we live in a time of radical uncertainty. So it's just radical, whether it's geopolitical, what's happening with your supply chain, tariffs, et cetera. But the technology side, even you with robotics and AI and all of the different things that are going on, there's a lot of challenges to your business model and to what your customers are going through. And in that time of radical uncertainty, it's easy to jump into very short term, batten down the hatches. We're not sure what to do. But when you've got that core kind of culture that you've described, and you've got that point that we've got to be stewards of the business and we've got to take care of our customers, then you've built a competitive advantage in your culture that your competitors can't easily replicate. And, like everybody will have some kind of AI doodad, but the fact that you were able to innovate in new, different ways and things, it's because you've got this culture that you've built and invested in over time. So you can pivot and you can be agile because your people trust you and they're engaged with you. And that's a competitive advantage in this new world that we live in.
Well, I think we're trying, like everyone else, to be also a place of where we can be as upfront as we can with what's happening. The challenge when things are very challenging and you don't know the future, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's today, on understanding how things are going to work or whatever, there's a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And what I would say is we're trying to kind of say, here's where we are. People in those situations typically want to know the future. And we got to remind them. It's like, like during the pandemic, when's it going to be over? It's like, we don't know. We don't. But here's what we know.
A week from Monday, now that you've asked.
But here's what we know. We know there's going to be, what can we do to keep moving, to go forward? Because, we were going to say, we don't know when the pandemic's going to be over. We don't know when the world's going to start again. But what we do know is we can go do these things. We can go do these things to take care of each other, to take care of our customers, to take care of the community. So let's do that. So we try to separate this in this storm, just kind of like, here's where we are, talk through it. Now within it, I'll tell people like, hey, maybe don't spend so much time on Facebook and don't spend so much time listening to the news that just drives you crazy. Like, let's just keep going. And even this year, isn't it amazing? We are in September of 25. I can't believe how fast the year's gone. Before you know it, the year's going to be over. Now, if you had just been wringing your hands for the last 9 months, it'd be like, and we've kept going. And no, there's business to be had. It's not perfect. There's a lot of noise. But what can we do to keep going? And that's what we're trying to just be an anchor and a speaker of where we are and we're going on. And also not tell people that what the future is going to be, because no one knows.
No one knows. Yeah. How do you deal with the generational issue that you're facing? I mean, for the first time, we have multiple generations inside the workforce. And, a lot of things are said about young people coming into the workforce, but I got to imagine you've got more than your fair share of people under the age of 30 coming into the business. And how has the idea of well-being with employees shifted for you as you've dealt with the under 30 crowd?
I'm one that would put a lot of this in generational cycles that happen forever. I mean, my parents didn't understand our music, thought we were slackers. I don't know a generation that doesn't think the next generation is probably near to the apocalypse, that thinks they, don't understand. I mean, in the 60s, there was like the tearing down of everything we knew, whether it be, our society or everything. So I'm a big believer in the that we're continuing to evolve in a positive way. And I have faith that there's a lot of good things that are happening with this generation. And I try not to bucket too much of it in like, well, they just don't. I try to remember the things I've heard for generations about my generation, about what they talk about the next generation. So I think there are differences for sure. But I don't see it as, I just see it as a continuing evolution of the generations. And you look at any of these generations, they all have their strengths and their weaknesses, and, they can all blame their parents.
Yeah. But I'm wondering specifically, because you guys really focus a lot on holistic well-being of your employees.
Yep.
I'm just curious whether you're seeing a shift and just across generations. Do you see that definition being different or some aspects being more or less important to the generations?
I think again, we believe in well-being, and then you'd say, well, what are you doing about it? We opened an on-site clinic in September of 2020. We did it with the local healthcare, one of the healthcare systems, Kettering Health in the Dayton area. They were all in when we said we'd like to put in a clinic. The reason we were putting in the clinic is we were trying to figure out how to impact people's health. And we had seen forever, we did everything the insurance companies would suggest, like I had a joke about like the walking challenge. They'd give everybody a pedometer and then they'd have prizes for who walked the furthest and you could get a team together. Well, anecdotally, what I was noticing was the people participating were the ones already active. They'd come in and say, can I win more than once? Can I run? You know, and then the person on their 15th Mountain Dew of the day wasn't participating at all. So we were trying to figure out what could we do that might impact people's health. And we discovered that there was a big chunk of folks that were not connected to the healthcare system. They just go to the emergency room when something was there, but didn't have any kind of real connection. And so we put in the clinic, and then in November of 23, we tripled the size of the clinic. And so all of our employees here on campus can see a nurse practitioner or a mental health therapist on site, on the clock, for free. Now, I would say, to me, now this is one of those where people asking me for the ROI on it. I'm like, there isn't, but I believe strongly in what this will be. And I would say we also opened up a 24-hour fitness center with locker room, great equipment, not like in a hotel or something. It's great stuff. We have a director of well-being. We're doing lots of programs to help people. We have a 3-shift operation, so people can go into the fitness center anytime, any day. But it was this was all in an effort to provide access and help people with their journey. I would say within it, you have the full spectrum of our demographics and our age, that you have people in all age categories that are doing it. And I would say probably our longest tenured, we're going to have the least impact on their overall health. I mean, they're probably set in a lot of their things that were controllable per se. And so, but I think where there is a huge opportunity is, one, to improve everybody's access and health and what their particular issue is, and longer term, can we impact that? Yes. But I think even more so, or maybe the people that are 30 to 45 that are really impacting their body, they just don't see it yet. And how they could start looking at some of the things where it's like, hey, I'm maybe on a path of diabetes. If looking at this, what might I do to improve that? So anyway, all of those were areas. And we have financial well-being, where we have counselors that people can go see, work on retirement planning or their month-to-month budgeting or whatever it be. But those are all areas that we're focused on in the what I would call the well-being journey. Their physical, their mental, their financial, their social. And these are the things that we're trying to provide access and information and resources to help people wherever they are with their journey.
You've called yourself an industrialist, focusing on how manufacturing can be a deep force for good. And as we know, manufacturing overall declined in the US, but then it's still pretty robust. So what's your thought about the role of manufacturing in society today, and why it should be more or different, or what are you thinking there?
Yeah. So I I love the manufacturing. I actually think of myself first as just a conscious capitalist and how that is, whatever it is. But I think there's certain um, great things about manufacturing. Manufacturers tend to have more people, that you're employing, and therefore I think you can impact more people. And so to me, that's a benefit. I think it's also, um, something, it's very cool that you're making things. Not that there isn't for the service industry and whatever,
Mm.
but, down to like, we are making a product that is going all over the world, that's helping people in the busiest kitchens. And so to see that, um, and within it, it's not like, gosh, isn't there joy from people that make software and whatever? It's like, yeah, that's good. And actually, there's software in our products too now. But to me, there's just something tangible about making stuff and the power of making stuff. And so within that, and you look at a community like we're in, we're a big part of it. If we were purely a service company, you'd be, a fraction of the size probably, unless you were whatever. And so anyway, to me, it's probably elements of making something, the satisfaction of making something with it, and then the number of people that we can impact in a wide spectrum of the community and skills.
And I'd like to understand a little bit about your leadership journey. There's always some formative experiences or influences that make people, out of it, you're born a certain way, and then you're shaped in a certain way. So what shaped your understanding of what leadership should be, and the kind of leader that you became?
It's kind of interesting as I've tried to look and understand my journey. But interestingly, I think what impacted me more than anything was I got very involved with nonprofits in the 90s that were, they were impacting the community, and I got involved with them. And on the boards, and just started looking at what these organizations were trying to do in Dayton, and what they were trying to do to lift people up, or whether it be in education or culture or whatever, just trying to improve the community. And I think it was actually through that I really just got a strong feeling of, felt so fortunate for, I almost feel like it's like, I have nothing to complain about, nothing to whine about, and it's like, I have 3 daughters. My wife and I married 36 years. We have 3 daughters. And I would think, like, if they would ever complain about anything, it'd be like, okay, we got to go down. Like, there's places all over the world that you don't understand how good we have it. And to feel that level of feeling fortunate, I think just, went to being, how can I impact people? And it started by being involved in these nonprofits, but then it was like, how can I impact people at work? Because we spend so much time of our life in work. And not to be morbid, but life is short. And it was like, just seeing where it's like, gosh, I feel so fortunate. I feel like so able to feel valued and appreciated, that how do I can help that be through work? And I think it just started moving in, how do I bring that to the company to impact people through work? And even with people, whether it be people I talk to or whatever, it's like, hey, if you're not at a place where you can feel valued and appreciated, and that you're making a difference, and that you're growing, and you feel engaged, and it's, then you need to leave. And I'm not saying like just you can quit overnight, but you need to prioritize, because you will regret those days of being in a caustic environment where you're not doing it. And so I think it was what influenced me most was I learned all the things about business and organizations and how you do things and perform. But I think it was just that flip of taking it from what about the people that are there and just taking the people side of it first and maybe a look at empathy and what's it look like for the people and then how to help support and grow the people. And I think that just formed everything and kind of flipped it. And, we talked earlier, and I believe this. I think there are people that manage and lead by the numbers. And I think there are people that manage and lead by the people, and then the numbers will come out. And I think that is something that I've felt strongly about, and then it just builds on it. And then, like when I found conscious capitalism, it just kind of reaffirmed this because there are a lot of folks that, again, would say, you don't need to think about anything other than numbers. If you think about the numbers, everything else will work out. It's kind of like, no. And here's my nightmare scenario is if Henny Penny ever turned into this. And there are many companies out there like this. They perform really well, but nobody likes working for that company and nobody likes dealing with that company. And it's like, and those companies might look good in your 401k because they perform
for a while
or whatever. But it's to me, it's the worst. And you're just, again, I feel terrible when you see people that are like at companies that they just chew them up and that's their plan. So I don't know. I've been rambling too long, Raj, but I think it came from a place of, I think it really enlightened me as I got involved with philanthropy, nonprofits, giving back and feeling fortunate, and then translating really that being a core part of the business, what I was working on.
Beautiful.
Do you think, Rob, that companies have a soul? And if so, how do we nurture that soul? Because we often make companies into these inanimate objects. We chop them up, cut them up, divide them up, sell them out, etc. Or we can think of this thing having its own destiny, its own journey, its own identity, its own,
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two things. I think most of the world, the leaders and the businesses today, and I kind of talk in hyperbole, so, but it would be, I would describe them as house flippers if it was the real estate market. They are optimizing for the short term. And I would view, say, a house flipper is not necessarily, I don't mean that as a negative. I think there are good house flippers. There are ones that are shoddy house flippers, but they're offering a value. But when you're house flipping, you're thinking about, I'm going to do something here and get a return in the next 3 years or 5 years or 1 year. And I look at it like we've got a long view. I look at it like we're building a cathedral, but most people that come in have been house flippers. If you're a house flipper, you're not going to put a 50-year roof on. It doesn't make any sense when you're playing that game. And by the way, if you are a house flipper, you shouldn't put a 50-year roof on. But what I think when you have a long view, and we're trying to figure out, we want to be here 100 years, 500 years from now. That is a much different place. And I think many people today are in this short-term game, and that's what they've learned. And by the way, if you are in a short-term game, if you're working for private equity and they've said, we want to flip this in 3 years, you probably can't play the same game I'm playing. I understand that's a different thing. I feel a privilege and an honor that I've got a place where I've got a long view. But if I was in a place where it'd be like, you got 90 days to turn this around, it'd be like, you probably ought to stop listening to this podcast. But I think many people have learned and think optimize. I think the other side, and back to the soul part, is I think one of the challenges we all have is that there's not a lot of credibility in what a lot of CEOs or leaders say. And I would divide up the CEOs into this. If you take everybody's what they say, it's I think about 90% all the CEOs say the same thing, and it continues to evolve. Whatever's the current buzzwords of the day, if it's important to say we're transparent or whatever. And I would say there's a group of those leaders that are actually really trying to do the things they're saying. And then I think there's a group that say it because they know it's smart, but they're not really doing it. And then I think the worst, the soulless, are the ones that are actually doing the opposite. They say it, but they're just, it's all about the numbers. It's not about people. They don't care about it. They're looking to enrich themselves. And that's our challenge because, again, everybody is saying mostly the same. The big difference is who's actually doing anything, and what are you saying? And for me, it'd be better for people like, well, don't say something if you're not going to do it, because you ruin everybody's credibility.
Yeah. Okay, well, Rob, we like to end with some lighter and more personal questions. So, are there any books that have changed the way you lead, or even changed your life? What are the most important, significant books that have impacted you?
God, there's so many. This sounds pretty corny since we're on this podcast. I would say Conscious Capitalism really made me stop and think of like, wow, this. And again, like I said earlier, the defense of capitalism being part of it, just kind of the education of, forget all of the philosophies and theories. Let's look at practice. And that's where, again, you sit there and go, but I would say that book, and then the bringing together how we do it better together and articulating it, that had a big impact. And I read a lot of books. And there's like hundreds that I've been given that I don't know when I'm going to get to. But if I had to single out one that had the biggest impact on my journey, a reaffirmation of the road I was on, and then connecting me to people, it was that book.
No, thank you. It's not a self-serving question, but anyway, thank you for that. Best advice that you've ever received?
I met a guy, Balaji Krishnamurthy, at a Vistage, and he was an amazing man. He still is, and an incredible mentor. It was I went to a leadership class he had, and it was all about intentional leadership, and through that, he helped me create this credo that I live by to this day. And it's maybe corny. It is savor the day while always learning for a better tomorrow. And it's one where I believe I'm not always able to do it, but I believe in, like, we need to be conscious and savor the moments we're in, whether it's today, right now, with you two, or with my family, or with that life is very short, and that we need to, as much as we can, it's that gift of how do you enjoy where you are, and then while always learning. I'm always curious. I feel like I still have so much to learn, and that, continuing to be curious. And I liken the learning to, how I would equate somebody who is old. What I see is when somebody decides they don't want to learn, I think they're old. It's like, I don't want to do that anymore. And to me, it's like, I have a self need. I'm trying to figure out how, what my daughters are doing. Like, what are they watching? What are they doing? I want to continue to be connected to culture and what's happening. So while always learning for a better tomorrow, I am an optimist. I try not to have rose-colored glasses on, but I am an optimist, and I believe that it's going to be better, and that we can get better each day by being present, by learning, and then working on tomorrow, that it's going to be better. Some people are like, the apocalypse is coming. And it's like, well, I don't need to plan for that. If that happens, so be it. But I'm assuming not. And so that was a huge impact as far as kind of advice, counsel that got me thinking about the intentionality of what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to lead. I'm probably not too rapid fire in these answers.
Yeah, no, this is good. And last question, if you could have dinner with any conscious leader or human being, past or present, who would that be? It could be more than one.
My grandfather. He was born in May 4th, 1892. My oldest daughter was born on May 4th, 1992.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty amazing, 100 years exactly. But, he saw from horse and buggy to man on the moon.
Incredible.
And, he died when I was like 20, but I would say I still wasn't really very evolved as far as really kind of I would love to really have been able to see his life and his experiences going from, World War I and being involved and living through the Depression and what it meant. And he was successful, but had big, challenges that he lived through. And, the roaring 20s to the Depression to, again, the 60s and just the fascination. I would love to be able to just be with him and be with him as I am now and have him walk me through his life.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, Rob, I want to thank you so much for joining us today for a wide-ranging conversation about how to create thriving businesses that are best places to work, where well-being is important and ownership matters at Henny Penny. Thank you, Rob. And thank you to our listeners. And if you enjoyed today's podcast on whatever channel you've been listening, please hit the subscribe button and/or go over to Apple and iTunes and leave us a review. We always love to hear that feedback. And we will see you next week. Rob, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Raj. It was great. I enjoyed it.
Yes, and for our listeners, if this comes out in time, if you come to Cincinnati for the Conscious Capitalism event there, then you have a full day after that to visit Henny Penny and meet with Rob.
Yep. This is, it'll be great. Hope you are able to visit.